So this episode is all about your moon cycle and your productivity. This episode is going to be full of so much practical information and also so much, I hope, empowered wisdom, which means that by the end of this episode, you'll be able to go away and feel you understand your own cycles better, you understand your own rhythms better, and that you can really start as an entrepreneur to take back control of how things look, not only in your life when it comes to your cycle, but also your business. So I'm going to be sharing exactly how I use this in my own life and business and what the results have been. Right. Are you ready to dive straight in? So I should also say this is a solo cast today. You just got me. And I feel really passionate about doing this on my own because this has been a very real journey for me. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in your menstrual cycle by any means. But what I will commit to is sharing my real journey and what I found to be super, super valuable and really helpful in my life and in my business. So let's just backpedal a little bit to why? Why are we talking about our moon cycle, our menstrual cycle when you're listening to the Wellness Entrepreneur podcast, when we're talking about business? So I'm going to be honest and say that for most of my life, I have been quite blissfully unaware of my own menstrual cycle. I haven't been someone that suffered greatly from a lot of pain. I hadn't been someone that suffered a lot from mood swings and that sort of stuff until I had my twins. So my twins are now 3.5, and since they were born and since my period came back, I have been on a bit of a roller coaster when it comes to my cycle. I've become very aware of it. Its timings have changed. It made me, I don't get too much pain, and I know many women do, and I'm going to signpost you at the end of this episode to a few people that I think would be great for you to go and listen to, get support from, should that be the case. But my energy levels are now so different throughout the month. Now, before I get into more of this, I just want to caveat that this episode is relevant whether you have your period or you don't. So I know there are many people out there who have various different birth control, which means that their period is not something they can use or predict. I also know that many people don't have their period anymore who listen to this podcast. So we're going to, as we go through, we're going to be talking about our cycles, and we can either do this by our own cycle. So if you have a regular cycle and you feel that it's easy to track, then you can implement it this way. Or you can use what I live by when it comes to my cycle, the moon. So you can go by the moon cycle, okay? So getting back to this story. So I just became a demon when it came to certain times in my cycle. I just felt all over the place. And I think I've done a lot of what many people have done, which is to internalize this. Like, I have had moments where I'm like, what's wrong? Why am I so emotional? Like, why am I being so sort of short? And why is this annoying me so much? And sort of not feeling like myself. And that's really something that I haven't experienced much. I've dedicated all my adult life to getting to know myself very well. And so to have this feeling of not being in control, not understanding what's going on, has been huge. And so this journey has led me to realize that I still don't really understand why. And maybe some of you guys listening to this who have more wisdom around hormone balance and all of that sort of stuff can shed some light. But I still don't know totally why after having my twins, everything changed so much. But that was definitely, for me, that was That was the point at which things have never been the same. And this was really starting to affect my business because I am a planner. I like to think about when I'm going to be launching certain things. I like to map out, my content. I like to think about what's going to serve you. I like to think about what we've got coming up. I like to give myself a really nice plan. And the plan was not happening because I was like in the middle of a launch, or I had intended to do something, and then I would be overwhelmed by these emotions, or I would just hit, like, some days my energy level is just so low. It's like no matter how much I sleep, I'm so tired. And it was really starting to affect my business. Now, I'd heard many people talk about the connection between your energy levels and your cycle and the moon cycle, and understanding what phase you're in. And I'd even heard people talk about that you can use this in business. And I was using this in business, as far as to say I was very aware when the full moon was coming. I was very aware when the new moon was coming. I was aware of energetic shifts in my environment, but I wasn't running that through my own internal process. In fact, because my cycle had always been so smooth and fine, I just wasn't really in touch with that side of myself so much. I didn't really know what day I was on, or, if someone said, what day of your cycle are you on, I think I'd be like trying to just brush past it, because I was like, I don't really know this stuff. And so I was like, right, this is a sort of call to dive deeper on this. And so I've done the work and have really found a system that works for me. And what I've now realized is that if I am always in tune with where I am at in my cycle, and as I said, whether this is your own menstrual cycle or whether this is tracked by the moon cycle, I can really start to not only create a life that supports me, so that when I'm in a lower phase of energy, I'm not asking myself to do massive things. And when I'm in a really good space, I've got the opportunity to utilize it. Not only is it helping me manage, I suppose, those fluctuations, but it's actually now got to a point where I'm maximizing on, and this is what gets me excited, I'm maximizing on my energy. So, I'm not like pushing sort of square peg, round hole situation. I'm able to time my launches, time things so that I can be at my most productive. Now, of course, this doesn't always go to plan. Like, you still have life shit going on. So this is, for me, it's a foundational piece. When I look at my launches, when I look at what I'm going to be doing, when I look at mapping out time off, I always go to this place first. So in today's episode, I'm going to be breaking the 4 phases of your cycle down, how you know when you're in them, what to look for, and the pièce de résistance is I'm going to be telling you what you should be doing in your business when you are in these different phases of your cycle. And what I would invite you to consider once you've listened to this full episode is, how can you start to implement this right now in your life and in your business? And could this be the thing that you've been looking for to eradicate that feeling of like constant, I was doing so well and now I'm exhausted. Oh, I was doing so well and now I'm exhausted. Because I also identify or have noticed that many of my community feel they're hard on themselves, feel like they're not doing enough, that they're not good enough, that why can't I keep this momentum going? Why do I get so far and then get floored? And I would love to invite you to consider that this isn't a error. that this isn't a problem with you, that this isn't because you don't know the right strategy or you're doing it wrong. It's simply because we were always designed to be cyclical beings, which means we can't just go on one linear trajectory. So that actually, if you could embed this process, this idea of this cycle into your working month, that in those times where you felt you'd slowed down or you'd taken a back seat or you'd taken your foot off the pedal, and those like natural narratives of, come on, what's wrong with you, would normally kick in, then actually you could just say, well, no, like I'm just in that place in my cycle right now. I need to come take my foot off the pedal because my time and energy is actually supposed to be used here. And this was the magic for me, is that I'm a big believer in implementation and integration, in being and doing, that it isn't just, it isn't just always the doing. But I was also very much guilty of thinking that the integration or the doing was sometimes felt like waste of time. So what I'm going to hopefully shed some light on here is what you can be doing in those times that will then enable you to take greater action, to have more impact, to see bigger results when you are in the doing and the implementation. So shall we just jump straight in? Now, I have a cycle of 29 days. Probably this episode is a slight overshare, but I feel like we're good friends now, those of you that have been listening for a while. So I have a 29-day cycle. So these numbers are based on my cycle because I wanted to give you real guidance. This isn't something I've just Googled. This is something that I live, I have experienced, I have journeyed with over a good year and a half now, and it works for me. So we're going to be looking at, if you are going by the moon cycle, then you will be looking at the number of days in the moon cycle and not in your own cycle. If you know your own cycle days, you will be adjusting these as we go. So mine is 29 days. So we're going to be talking about the first phase in your cycle, which is days 1 to 5. Now, you may have heard this referred to as your winter season. So I'm going to be talking about your various seasons. For me, this was really helpful. I am obsessed with seasons. I love seasons. I love a change in season. So for me, it's really helpful to imagine where I am in terms of my internal seasons, because it gives me a really quick, I understand what happens in that season. So we're going to explore winter. So winter is day 1 to 5 for me, and it's usually when you are bleeding, when you have your bleed. Now, as I say, if you're going by the moon cycle, then this is those first few days. So it's around that full moon time, right? I've got my cycle now so that I tend to come on the full moon, which for me it feels so magical because I believe in this stuff so much. But it wasn't like that for about 2 years after having my twins. For the last 2 years, it wasn't like that. But I think doing this work and really trying to get back into sync with nature has just slowly, incrementally moved me to this place. So it might not stay like this forever, but at the moment, I generally come on the full moon. So what goes on in this winter season? Well, as you can imagine, your hormone and energy levels are low. So what should we be doing? We should not be, at this time in our cycle, pushing ourselves. This is not the time to launch anything. This is not the time to put pressure on yourself. So hopefully straight away there, you're like, oh, what a relief. You have full permission in this time to take your foot off the visibility pedal and to start doing other things in your business. So what could you be doing? So this is a time to notice ideas that are percolating. So you tend to find that during the full moon, during these first few days, you get lots of things dropping in. Now, if you're anything like me, when an idea drops, I'm all in. I'm like, that's it. That's what we're going to do. It's going to be brilliant. Give me the pen and paper. I need to write out the plan. But what you want to do here is take zero action and simply allow ideas to percolate, because this is what I'm saying. This is a prime time for new ideas to come in and things that are no longer serving you to release, to disappear, to dissolve. Now, if you move from catching an idea into action, you miss this opportunity. So this is where I'm hoping that you're going to start to hear that the actions that you actually take in these stages fuel what happens in a different area of your cycle when you are much more, you're set up for success because your energy levels are in a much, much better place. So this is an idea to let things percolate. Just, you can jot them down, you can journal them, but allow yourself to sit, allow yourself to slow down. Allow yourself to look at releasing. So this is literally what's happening in your body. So allow things to release. Look at what's not serving you anymore. A lot of people will talk about, the sort of the moodiness or, feeling irritable, and that it's just a hormonal symptom. And what I've really enjoyed doing is, yes, I think this is exaggerated and amplified due to hormones, due to the moon. But I also think that it highlights shit we're not happy with. And that's okay. And that's good. And emotions are there for a reason. They're not there to just say, to sort of shame, like, oh, it's just because I'm a woman that I'm feeling this, just because of my hormones. I think this is actually a real opportunity, something that we have, a real gift, because once a month, we have an opportunity to really lay everything on the table and to notice. Our emotions make us notice what isn't okay. So it's a real time of shedding, releasing, and letting go. It's a big time to step back and to reflect. So when this comes to visibility, there are many platforms where the algorithm is such that you want to keep momentum. So this is sometimes where we get frustrated with ourselves, because we might have got some really good traction on Instagram recently or on Facebook recently, or we've been getting our podcasts out regularly, and then this sort of time in our cycle hits and we just want to throw ourselves under the duvet. So while I'm encouraging that, there are things that we can do in our businesses to support this time. So I've started to notice that my content reflects my seasons. So when I'm in autumn moving to winter at the moment. And when I'm in winter and autumn, I tend to share more reflective posts. I use my socials really as like a journal, to share what's going on. And so I tend to find that a lot of my content is cathartic. It helps me because I can write a post more about what I've reflected on, what I've noticed this month in my business, what I'm ready to release. And so rather than this pressure to like get out there and be all like shiny and exciting, I'm like, there's value in this for my audience. So where's the value in your downtime for your audience? Where's the value in the reflection? How could you use your content creation as an opportunity to, not from a raw place, from a safe place, to share some reflections that might really help? I would encourage you to look at how could you use your social media, your marketing, to reflect your own seasons. You don't need to create a podcast about it like I have if you don't want to. They don't need to know, but you know. And you're allowing yourself to be in the place that you are at, which I think is really, really powerful because you're human. You're not supposed to just operate at, in one way for an entire month. You're naturally going to have these ebbs and flows, so allow your audience to come in on it. The other thing you can do is start to look at curating content rather than creating content at this time. So by curating content, we mean sharing other people's posts, using your Discover page on Instagram to find some quotes, to find some other people's posts. When you don't have the energy or time, you do have the time because you're taking it easy, but you don't have the time to work because you're resting. But, when you don't necessarily have the energy, you don't feel particularly creative, then you can really start to look at how can you start sharing other people's. And that really helps you to become a good curator. People enjoy what you're sharing, you're signposting them to other accounts, and plus you're celebrating other people. So there are ways in which you can continue to show up, but not feel that you've got to be front and center. And again, allowing this to be the case gives you space. You're not spending these 5 days beating yourself up that you've not put anything out there, because you've already got a plan. You know that when you move into winter, you really feel that you can, you already know what you're going to be doing in that phase, because you've given yourself full permission to operate differently in a way in which supports your natural flow. So that is day 1 to 5, roughly. As I say, if you're doing this by your own cycle, that will be shifting, but roughly days 1 to days 5. Right, now we are moving into spring. So as I said, you can probably imagine what happens when we move from winter into spring. So as we move into spring, things are starting to, if you think about nature, things are starting to shoot up from the earth. Growth is starting to happen. But I want to remind you, this is incremental, this is slow. You don't walk out of your house one day from winter to spring, certainly not if you're in the UK, and all the flowers are in full bloom. It doesn't happen like that. It's incremental, it's slow, it's a process. But there's definitely growth that occurs. So, what days are spring? So for me, my spring is from about day 6 to day 15. So let's see what's happening in spring. So we start to get a real solar plexus and third eye sort of activation. We start to get into movement. Our estrogen is on the increase. We just start to feel a lot better, a lot brighter. Our skin, our body tends to, when I say look better, I don't mean in a sort of shallow way, but I mean we just feel brighter. I can often tell just by looking at myself in the mirror. I'm like, my whole energy field is just emanating in a really, really different way. So during this phase, if you are someone that moves, that does launches, because I am, so I want to help a girl and a gal out. A girl and a gal are the same thing. A girl and a guy out. Is if you are a launcher, this would be a good opportunity to go into pre-launch. So when you're starting to sow the seeds, hence spring, when you are starting to get the feelers out, something that's coming out, spring is your perfect time. Don't pre-launch in winter. Pre-launch in spring. So it's a great time to start to concentrate. You start to have more capacity to take things on, and you start to have a lot more desire to inquire. So you want to research a lot more. Your levels of awareness are so much more heightened. You have much more energy at your disposal. You would really do yourself a favor in your spring season to start doing some more physical activity. So as you start getting more into that excited, that action sort of mode, you really want to move on that. So like attracts like. So when you're feeling that way, it's a really good idea to feed your body with the thing that it wants. So everyone's idea of physical activity looks different. There's no prescription here, but just invite yourself to get more into the body at this phase. Again, when we're in winter, when we want to just hide under the duvet, don't beat yourself up for not going to the gym and lifting those weights that you normally lift, or doing all that running that you normally do. I'm presuming someone out there does these sort of things. That's not me, but don't put pressure on yourself. Move your body, that's really important, but maybe just go for some walks in your winter. Do something slow, do something wholesome, do something that suits your energy levels. So when we're moving up to our spring, you really want to be starting to sow those seeds. do the research, reach out to people, look for collaboration opportunities, really start to become a bit more playful, start to think about how you can maximize on your energy levels by moving your body more. So this would be a perfect time for a pre-launch. Right, now we are moving into summer. So again, what do we think of when we think of summer? Bright colours, vibrancy, being outside a lot more, all of those things we can think about in our business, and that's exactly what's happening in our summer. So the summer is days for me 16 to 23. That's when I'm in my summer. So this is the time to up level and stretch yourself. Or physically stretch, but you know what I mean, like in your business, up level and stretch yourself. So there are, those memes, those quotes that go around on social media all the time about pushing yourself to the next level, like keeping on going, like overcoming everything. And whilst I totally believe in that sentiment, if I hadn't have that like overriding narrative in my life, I don't think I'd be where I am right now. But it's best placed when utilized in the summer. Again, trying to force yourself to up level during your winter or your autumn, that's when you get these really dark moods, because you're asking yourself, it's like asking a toddler to lift the weight of like a world-class bodybuilder. It's just not gonna happen. Like the physicality isn't there. And yes, limiting beliefs and all that, and a lot of people will tell you, oh, that's just a limiting belief. But I think there's a place for us to realize that sometimes this constant limiting belief thing, like everything is a limiting belief, isn't helpful, because sometimes the physical body isn't supposed to do that in that moment. And so we can actually cause a much more difficult internal landscape when we're fighting against something that just is not going to happen. So up level and stretch yourself in your summer. Move towards it. Allow your winter to be the time that you kick back, you put that warm log fire on, you get under the duvet, you allow the ideas to come in, you allow what you don't want anymore to leave you, you have a little cry, you feel those emotions because they're valid and they're important, and you know that spring, summer's coming. So spring is when you're sowing those seeds, it's when you're getting curious, it's when you're reaching out, things are getting a bit more playful, and summer's when you really decide to go all in. So summer is your launch, people. That is when you are in full launch mode. This is the time to show up. This is the time to do those live streams, to get super visible, maximize on it. Really allow yourself to optimize this. So again, like attracts like. If you are in that zone, let your body have more of it. Let your mind have more of it. Let your spirit have more of it. And you will really see the benefits. I promise you. This is the time when you are at your best in terms of communication. So when I look at messaging and marketing with my clients and sales and all of that sort of stuff, this would be a really good time to open the doors for new one-to-one clients or for a new project, or to launch something. But anything that requires you to really convey some powerful messaging, to up your conversions, to really get people on board with what you're trying to say, is summer. So really start to have a look if you can plot your launch calendar, or if you can plot when things are coming up, so that you can be at your best level of communication during this time. So again, I'm hoping that you're really seeing like, okay, that makes sense. I was banging my head against a brick wall trying to create a sales page in my winter. I just couldn't get the words out. And then what do? We internalize that as, I am rubbish at copy. I am rubbish at messaging. I'm rubbish at marketing. But what if you were just trying to push yourself to do something that in that moment in time, you just weren't geared up for? So you can really start to build this into your business plan. This is also the time to take risks and to be bold and brave and courageous. So this is the time to plug yourself in every day to some motivational speaker that you love, someone that is like cheerleading you on every single step of the way. This is the time to like rev that engine, get fierce with your morning rituals. You're up, you're journaling, you're listening to that 20 minutes of whoever, Tony Robbins or whoever it is that you love, Oprah or whatever, and then you're going for that run and then you're like on it. How many times do you hear people say, oh my goodness, I had the best morning routine for like 2 weeks and then it just fell by the wayside. And that's it. I failed. I'm rubbish. There's no point me trying again. What if you were just not in the right season in your cycle? What if that fierce morning routine could just be utilized during your summer or during your spring summer? What if it was okay to change it 4 times a month? So really this is about maximizing, taking those risks, thinking about, this is the time to like put yourself forward for being a guest on a panel, or put yourself forward for that book deal, or put yourself forward to work with someone or someone that you think would be an amazing fit for your program or your offer. Reach out to them and ask them if they'd like a conversation. This is the time to be brave, to be bold, because you can handle it. Your energy wants it. It will thrive on it. And energetically, you're really activating through your throat, your solar plexus, and your root. And that's what makes this really special, because the root is sometimes tricky. That's what we need to land stuff. And those of us in the wellness space, we get really excited by like the third eye, the crown, all the spiritual stuff. But in reality, if you can't ground your ideas, if you can't land them, they ain't happening. They're not coming. You need the physical form for them to come into full manifestation. So that's where this is so powerful. You'll find that you've got a throat activation. You can speak your truth more. You can really turn that up. You've got that solar plexus, that fire energy supporting you. And then you've also got the full ability to land it in your root. So moving on to what I find to be the hardest part of my cycle. But again, this is going to be so unique to you. Like, even if we're all looking at the moon cycle, yes, we're all being affected by that same energy field, but it's communicating and interacting with your own energetic system, which means everyone's single experience will be so different. But for me, autumn is no fun. It's no fun. Well, it's not fun if I try and make myself do the things that I just am not made to do at that time. So for me, autumn is day 24 to 29. Thankfully, it doesn't last very long. And the trickiest part for me is the cusp. So like day 24, 25, it's not good. 23, 24, 25 is when I tend to find emotionally, energetically, I feel it the most. Now, I think why this gets me is because nearly every single month, however much I do this, I forget this. I forget how difficult it is. I forget what it feels like. And every single time it comes, it catches me unawares. And one of the biggest reasons is because my mood changes before my energy levels change. So I become a lot more sensitive. I become a lot more on edge. Things magnify emotionally for me. I become more irritable, more snappy, while still having quite a high energy level. And it's not until my energies drop, which is a little bit later into autumn, that I go, oh, I remember. Okay, we need to adjust things around here. So this is the most tricky part for me, not my winter. Actually, when I move into winter, and when I start my cycle, when my bee comes, I tend to find like it's a release. I feel so much better. And I found it really ironic. In fact, while I'm recording this, I can even see an autumnal background on my screen. And I'm looking out my studio, which is pretty much all made of glass, and there's just autumnal colours all around me. And this autumn, I'm not sure if it's because of lockdown or what it is, But this autumn, I feel like I found my season. I love autumn. I just find it really powerful. So it's interesting that I struggle with it so much in my cycle. So what I've really learned to do around autumn is to create space. I can't emphasize, for me, and this may be the same for you, how important it is to create space. Which means, I don't shut my diary this week of a month, but I do make it a quieter week. I don't put any additional pressure on myself. If I'm booking time off, if I'm booking holidays, if I'm, coming out of a launch, this is when I make sure I do it. I have been in launch phases during my autumn and it's just not felt good. It really hasn't felt good. And I'm sure, I'm sure that it's been reflected in my results. I'm super proud of where we've got to and we've smashed so many goals, but I'm sure that we could have hit even higher heights had I timed it slightly different. So for me, this is all about creating space in the diary. So before I was really acutely aware of this, and even sometimes now it will still catch up with me. If it hits me on a day and I wasn't aware of it and I'm really busy, I will invite myself to see, where can I strip this day back? How can I make this day quieter, slower, easier? This is so important because this is about challenging the belief that in order to serve your community, your family, your clients, your friends, you've got to keep to all of those commitments. Because sometimes saying no, changing things around is the best gift that you can give, not only to yourself, but to those around you, because you can show up and really, really support them from a much more, a brighter place, from a place that's much more topped up. So it's really important to create space here. For me, this is just this surge of energy comes to the sacral, and nearly all of your energy is accumulated in your sacral. And what you want to be doing here is starting to push that energy down to the root. That's really what's going to allow you to discharge the energy that you've built up over your cycle. It's the thing that's going to allow you to shed, to let go. But what can happen, what happens with me, what happens with many people in the autumn, is that, and interesting that the environment reflects so much orange back to us because that's our sacral center, is we hoard our energy here. It doesn't know where to go. It gets greater and greater and greater, and we just become an emotional just roller coaster. Because that's our first feminine center. It's where our emotions are housed. And when we become excessive there, it's natural that we feel overwhelmed, we feel out of control, and we feel the emotions, but we don't know how to process them because we haven't got access to that root. So when we allow ourselves to have the space and the time during our autumn, the root goes, thank you, because I can start to really move this energy out. And really, so then you feel much more grounded. It's not about eliminating the emotions. It's an important time in your cycle to process emotions, but it's a time to allow you to do that in a safe, supported way, in a way that will allow you to move through them and actually get what we're supposed to get from them, which is those lessons, those releases, that overcoming. So it's really, really powerful. So emotionally, you can feel in a really low mood. You can feel frustration, sometimes a lot of anger, and also that real deep sadness sometimes in this time, I'm crying when I'm watching Hollyoaks. It's like you don't need to do very much at this time, and you can feel that emotion surfacing. And sometimes I feel like it's almost everything that's gone on that month that I maybe haven't created the space to process, or that hasn't come to the fore. It just all surfaces at that time. So that space is so important. It's an amazing time to look at, to develop that self-inquiry, to do more journaling, to do more meditation, to ask yourself, what's that feeling telling me? What do I need? Getting your needs met at this time. If you can get your needs met now, you'll be flying through the rest of your month. So this is the time to really deepen that relationship with yourself. You'll find yourself Obsessing over tiny details. So this is sometimes the weakness in the autumn, because this is what leads to a lot of frustration and anger. And this is where you can like nitpick other people. You're like, why are you not doing it the way I want you to do it? You know, I have to be really mindful. I have a team. So we're in this time, it could be the time where I'm thinking, why hasn't she done this yet? I've asked her to do it like 10 minutes ago. Why is it taking her so long? So I have to be really mindful that I'm not nitpicking, because this is suddenly you become like laser focused. Sometimes suddenly you become like, you hone in on these small tiny details, which like in your spring and summer you'd be like, well, it's not even a big deal, who cares? But all of a sudden you're just like, no, this is a really big problem. Or your partner, I think my husband just wants to move out most of the time when I'm in my autumn, but you know, no, he is super supportive. But it's about, you know, I might be like, why have you not cleaned that way? Or are you going to leave that there? You know, it's all these little nitpicking. So that can be a real weakness of it, but it's a great time to start looking at the details in your business. You'll be happier to do your admin. You'll be happier to do your planning, your scheduling, sorting out your diary, getting organized during your autumn. You know, in the summer, your energy doesn't want to be doing that. It wants to be creating. Spring, summer wants to be creating. It wants to be out there in the world, mingling. It wants to be connecting. It doesn't have time for all the sort of like humdrum. Whereas in your autumn, you can really like redecorate your house, look at how you want to, change things up in your business, make some graphics, do some of the smaller details. It's also really important in this space to understand that you need to ground your energy before your cycle ends. So this is coming to the end of your cycle. We're moving into the full moon. And if you can ground your energy through autumn, you will allow winter to be so much more of a magical time. And then again, set yourself up for creating some massive impacts, some big results through to spring and then summer. So I hope that has been helpful. That autumn time is also really good for a debrief. So when I teach my launching process, which is episode number 59 on the Wellness Entrepreneur podcast, the 5-step launch formula. So when you really look at that, you can actually look at where these phases fall in your cycle. And I would really encourage you to plan your launches using these 2 episodes, perhaps side by side. So autumn is a really good time for you to do a debrief with yourself. Make sure you do this. I actually think, one of the key factors to success, whilst we obsess over like the new bells and whistles, how can I learn how to do something new for the next launch? What should I do that's new? I think where we miss a trick sometimes is reflecting, allowing that debrief to reflect on, well, what went well last time and what didn't? Because we can double down on what went well and make sure we don't make the same mistakes a second time round. And sometimes we're in such a rush to move on to the next goalpost that we don't allow ourselves to do this. So actually, in this autumn, if you want to use this in terms of how do I use this in my business, I'd invite you to use this as a moment to debrief. And even if you haven't been in a launch phase, debrief like that month. So what's been going on? That's why a full moon ritual is helpful, because very often in a full moon ritual, you'll look at, a reflection of what went well, what do I want to let go of, what do I want to keep in that time. In fact, we have a treatment in my spa, our full moon ritual treatment. And right at the beginning of that treatment, we invite our clients to do exactly that. So it's really powerful. And you could really sync this up each month with an opportunity to debrief on how things have gone that month and allow yourself to journal that out. So we have our winter, our spring, our summer, and our autumn. So there are a few apps that you can use, and lots of free resources that will really help you to, if you want to be tracking your own cycle, will really help you to start to get an idea of how many days it is, what phases you are in. My favourite app is called Moody. Now, I have an issue with the name, I'll be honest, because I just think, one of the reasons that as women, we don't we shame ourselves around our menstrual cycle is because it's always been this sort of the butt end of a joke, you know, that it's like, oh, she must be on her period every time we have an emotion. And so I don't think it's necessarily helpful to have an app called Moody, which sort of reaffirms that. However, I do have to say the information inside the app is really good. It breaks it down through seasons. It doesn't give you quite the same terminology, but you can really start to see it. It also gives you little information about what you can expect as you start to move into your next season. So it's really, really helpful. I would also definitely encourage you to go and check out Lenise Brothers, who has been a guest on this podcast. Her episode was also awesome, so go and check that out. But if you really want to understand more about your menstrual cycle in general, the symptoms, what you need to be looking out for, things that might be happening in your cycle that you might want to explore a little bit more, then I would really encourage you to go and find her over on Instagram. She's got loads and loads of really interesting content. So I would love to hear how you found today's episode. I'd love to know if you are already implementing some of this in your life and in your business, if this is brand new to you, or if, like me, a couple of years ago, you'd heard it out there and you were just wondering, how can I really start to utilize this, not just in my life, but in my business? Because if you're in the entrepreneurial space, you know, you really need to start to look at ways in which your business can fuel your life and your life can fuel your business. It can be a very blurred line. And in order for your clients and for yourself to get the most out of your business, you need to be honoring your own physical form, your energetic expression, and absolutely everything in between. And I think if you're on a real quest to up level in your business, you really want to, you know, increase your impact, increase your income, and all those things we hear out there, you know, in everyone's marketing. What's required in order for you to do that isn't just to look at the strategy. It isn't just to look at what do I need to do step by step, whilst you'll know I'm a massive fan of that. And you'll know that I feel that many business coaches out there are void of that, you know, that it is just about the limiting beliefs, that it is just about the mindset. But the reality is you do need to know the step by step. And that's why I hope that on this podcast, we cover a lot of that so you can really get some sort of free guidance there. But it is also important to ask yourself what's required of you energetically, internally, to get this next up level. And I promise you, the more people you hold space for, the more income you generate, the more you need to be able to understand your own energetic capacity and to maximize it when you need to, but also to conserve it and to honor it and to protect it and love it when you need to as well. It's not just about always going full throttle. It's not just about always, you know, smashing those goals and hitting those new income ceilings and all of that sort of stuff. Those things just won't continue to happen if you're not able to also tune in more deeply with every up level to what's needed from a personal, a physical, and an energetic perspective. Because I promise you this changes. Just because you nail it for 6 months, just because you think you've got this down, it doesn't mean you can then start creating systemize it. So it's like, ding, you get a notification on your phone that says you're moving into autumn and you can go, okay, I'll do my autumn things. Because without a daily inquiry as to where are we at right now, are we in the phase that we're expecting ourselves to be, you will just start to treat again your physical and your energy body as just something you're like dragging behind you. Come on, we've got to get this shit done. Come on, I need you to operate. Come on, I need you to function. And that obviously doesn't do your body any good, but also doesn't do your business any good because you need it. You need the two to be working together. So I'd love to hear. Come over and find me on Instagram. I'm at Kirsty Kianifard. I'm there the most, hanging out there a lot on stories and in the comments on my posts and in my community's posts. So do come and let me know. I love to see you take a screenshot of listening to this episode, sharing your greatest takeaway and tag me in that so I can share it with my communities and share your amazing work. All right, guys, have an incredible week. I shall see you next time. See you later. Bye.